Water, earth, fire, air. Long ago, I didn't know anything about The Last Airbender. Then, everything changed when my best friend said, let's do a podcast. We could call it Avatar State Radio. 6,953 days had passed before I discovered Avatar, not the blue cats, but a 19-year-old cartoon. Like Aang, I have a lot to learn, but I believe I'll love Avatar The Last Airbender.
So I literally don't know what are we calling it Avatar State Radio?
I mean, so I think you need to understand why we would call it Avatar.
All right, so it does mean something to the world.
Right. So State Radio is like a band or whatever. I tried to look it up. I don't think that anywhere else has ever called anything State Radio, unless I'm mistaken.
Right.
But so there is. I mean, the whole premise of Avatar: The Last Airbender is it's this kid who has the ability to harness all four of the elements. Nobody else in the world can do multiple elements at the same time.
So hold on, stop right there, because and I don't know how this show is going to run going forward, because we're going into it I like different than other shows. Like, we'll normally have, I think, a proper intro,
right,
and stuff, versus doing it in post like I normally do. And but like, even with when we did this concept with Game of Thrones, late to the Game of Thrones. And by the way, folks, the concept of Avatar State Radio is, I guess, for Mike, like a rewatch and then to talk about it.
Right.
And for me, I know with Game of Thrones, I knew something about it, right? With Avatar, The Last Airbender, you've told me more than I knew about it 30 seconds ago.
Right.
Like, just that. So like, all I know is that it's an IP that exists.
Mm-hmm.
I know that M. Night made a live action movie.
Mm-hmm.
Was that based off a show? Was that based off a
Yeah. So it was based off a show. And do you know that the show was a cartoon?
Well, I know that there's a Netflix cartoon now-ish, or there was-ish?
There was. So it was a cartoon that originally aired on Netflix didn't air it themselves. It was Nickelodeon aired it in like 2003 to 2005 or something like that.
And is that like the origin of the IP, or does it date back to like anime?
No. So it's always been American, but with kind of like an anime feel. So it was Avatar, and it was 3 seasons. It was 3 books. It was the Book of Water, the Book of Earth, and the Book of Fire. And then they did a sequel series called The Legend of Korra, which is set, 50 years in the future, something like that. And it stars another Avatar. Because we'll talk about it more. But I'll let you ask your questions.
So the Netflix animated series,
that's Nickelodeon. It's not an original.
Okay, so it's not an original. It's just
from
Nickelodeon now, from the early 2000s.
Correct. But earlier this month, Netflix released the live action remake. So there is a live action version of the show now. Now, our watch would not be the live action. Our watch would be the cartoon.
Right. Why would we capitalize on? But that's fine. That makes sense, because I feel like you need to watch all the stuff ahead of time.
So, I mean, the Netflix series only has 8 episodes, and it does a lot with those 8 episodes. But the original TV, the animated show had like 24 episode seasons. Okay. So some of it feels like filler and everything like that, but there is a very good reason that it's, so beloved by so many people. It stuck the landing. It was great throughout. It's, it's charming and humorous, and, it's got a lot of like emotion without feeling overstated or anything like that. And the characters are just spectacular.
And you said there was 3 seasons. One was the Book of what? So
season 1 was the Book of Water. So I'll give you like a basic premise of how the show starts. So Aang is the last Airbender, and the whole concept is the reason he's the last Airbender is because when he found out that he was the Avatar, the Fire Nation attacked. This is all in the intro to the show, by the way. Like, you get this in 30 seconds of watching the show. The Fire Nation attacked the Airbender Temple, where like all the Airbenders kind of converged to celebrate, the Avatar being revealed. He ended up through events kind of trapped in ice like Captain America for 100 years. But the problem is a new Avatar can't show up until the old Avatar dies. So everybody thought the Avatar is a coward, he's in hiding, blah, 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 blah. And the Fire Nation is trying to find the new Avatar because no one would have lived 100 years. Like, that Avatar's got to be dead by now. And then 100 years later, someone from one of the water tribes, two siblings, Sokka and Katara, they randomly happen upon Aang and his sky bison Appa, thaw him out of the ice, and then Prince Zuko of the Fire Nation, discovers that the Avatar is alive and sets his sight on bringing the Avatar back to the Fire Nation so that he can kind of regain his honor. He's been exiled by his father, and the other important piece is that Prince Zuko's uncle Iroh travels with him. So he's not exiled by himself. Iroh's not strictly speaking exiled, but he travels with his nephew because he has an affinity towards him and he cares about him and things like that. So Katara and Sokka are kind of like Aang's found family, and the whole premise of the show, the cartoon, is Aang needs to learn how to waterbend, firebend, earthbend. There's no one who he can talk to from the air. He's the last airbender, so there's nowhere for him to go.
So that answers, I think, my question why I asked. So season one's like the Book of Water, then there's the Book of Fire.
Earth comes second, and then fire comes last. So
I was going to say they're missing a book,
right?
But now I know he's the last of it. Gotcha.
Yeah, okay. and he's already got a very good grip on airbending. He's doing a lot of flying, and he's doing a lot of shooting gusts of wind. And in the show intro, he's scooting around on a ball of air that kind of spins around. You don't see that too often in either of the shows, but they have a reference of it in the intro. But for the majority of the cartoon's first season, he's learning from Katara some basics. And then the first arc is kind of we need to find a pro waterbender, because Katara is so new to it. She needs an expert herself to figure it out. And Sokka doesn't bend at all. Sokka's just kind of a warrior of his tribe. And very much, they're all kind of comedic reliefs, but Sokka, in my opinion, is the true comedic relief of the show. And I think that what we would do at some point, like I said, we would start with the cartoon,
right.
And then maybe what we do is, after season 1 of Avatar State Radio, if you're enjoying the show, we would give ourselves a bonus episode of watching the M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Yeah, which again, I would say, outside of, I know there's a cartoon only because people have talked about it.
Right.
And I just assumed that it was not from Nickelodeon. I assumed it was a dubbed cartoon from.
Right. Yeah. Completely an American original. And now the two creators of that have linked up with Paramount Plus. I think they are going to be doing a animated movie in the Avatar universe in 2025, and I believe probably later than that we're getting the third Avatar. So we're getting an Earth Avatar starting in probably 2026. So we had Korra, who was the Avatar after Aang, and then we're going to have another Avatar after her. But I don't want to say too much more, because there's another one just based on that fact. But
yeah, so it sounds like the game plan, and I will say that right before we started recording, I discovered that some of my adapters stopped working for my computer. So I don't know how I sound right now. Last time we did this, the first time we recorded an episode for my other podcast, Everything Is Awesome, I used the internal mic. So it sounded pretty good. So I'm assuming my AirPods sound better.
Yeah, I mean, from my end, you sound really good. So I'm assuming that.
But eventually I'll have my adapter back, and I'll be back to the level of standards I appreciate. And I don't know if anyone else hears the difference, but I do. And it's funny. We're going to try not to go on tangents in the show, except for episode 0 here. I was reading a casting call for another podcast, an actual play podcast. that they don't want you using Blue Yetis. And I'm like, that's wild to me because I think they sound wonderful. Not, I don't know that there's a true difference between that and my like actual headset, like my actual Shure microphone, but whatever. Anyway, so it sounds like, depending on how this goes, and isn't there like a role playing game that just like last year kickstarted for a lot of money?
I don't recall.
Yeah, I think there was. I think there was.
Yeah.
So at some point I'll learn why this podcast is called Avatar State Radio.
Right. Well, so do you want me to explain that just kind of briefly now?
Does it spoil a lot or no?
I mean, so again, the Avatar is supposed to have like all of the bending abilities.
Right.
Kind of, it's like an amped up version of, hey, I'm using all the abilities at once.
Oh, okay.
So like nothing spectacular. It's not, it's a cool experience when you see it the first time, but like, it's not like you're revealing,
I was hoping you were saying that there was some sort of like pirate radio
station
in the show.
That's probably like if we go One Piece, if we do a One Piece show that lasts 3,000 episodes, I'm sure at some point there's some kind of pirate radio.
But yeah, so it sounds like we'll end up doing the first season of Avatar: The Last Airbender animated series, assuming that goes well. As in, I enjoy the show, which was the kind of the dipping point for when we did Late to the Game of Thrones. Not that I didn't enjoy Game of Thrones, I actually started to like it.
Right.
But it was a big commitment, and it was harder to record then. Right. Now it's pretty easy to record.
Well, and the ultimate problem is you might have, like, if it was easier to record and you enjoyed it, by the time the 6th and 7th season came, or 7th and 8th season came around and I started to hate it,
right, like
I would have felt like it was such an obligation to do that show. But I know that I loved Avatar all the way through. I loved, The Legend of Korra. So the question is, are you going to enjoy it as well? Because there are, I mean, we're very nerdy, but we're not necessarily nerdy in the same
way. We have, I feel like we have cross throughs, right? Yeah. But then there's stuff like, I would say like Game of Thrones is an example of like sword and sorcery, which I'm not, despite the fact that you write it and I write it sometimes, like it's not, I don't like Lord of the Rings. I mean, I don't hate it. I don't hate Lord. I watched them. They were good. Yeah. I do not want to watch them again.
You know what it is? You don't use it as a comfort watch. And a lot of people do. Like Rihanna will watch Lord of the Rings like 12 times a year because
oh my God.
It puts her into like such a peaceful, tranquil mood. Like she can watch, I don't think that she watches the entire thing through, but like she will watch Fellowship like 20 times a year.
God.
And the same thing for Harry Potter. Like there is something comfortable about it.
I mean, I guess that's kind of like Star Wars for me, but even that, like, I watch maybe once a year.
Yeah. I mean, she doesn't watch it, but it'll be like a background show.
Yeah, no, I think the issue is when I watch something, like I'm invested. I don't ever really put on. The only thing I put on for comfort is at Christmas time when I'm wrapping gifts. It's Die Hard, it's Scrooged, it's Muppet Christmas Carol. I usually have those on in the back. Like I'm paying attention, but I'm also wrapping. So they're my comfort movies at Christmas when I'm wrapping. Any other time I'm watching something, I'm typically invested. Yeah. Which maybe is the issue. Maybe I'm doing things wrong as a human.
So, I will say this, for Avatar, we didn't have Avatar available on any streaming services when Rihanna and I watched them. So we literally went out and like got the DVDs to watch it. And we liked it enough to go and say, all right, let's get the 2nd season. Let's get the 3rd season. Let's get the Korra seasons, all that kind of stuff. We watched the M. Night Shyamalan version, which, we'll talk about more as season 1 wraps up.
Right. I think I do know. So again, before we talked on episode 0 here, what I thought I knew is obviously wrong, that it originated as a Japanese anime. I was close. Yep. I was close. I knew that M. Night Shyamalan made a movie, and I know that it was not well received.
Correct.
They are and that is like the most I know about Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Right.
Like, and to the point where a lot of people refer to this show as Avatar, and I'm like, why are we talking about blue cats right now? Like,
Right. Well, and I think certainly this preceded Avatar, the
yes.
Blue Cat movie. And they also will call it. No, I'm sorry, I was thinking A Court of Thorns and Roses or something. That's Akatar. But yeah, they will call it Avatar. I think they call it ATLA because of the acronym.
No, that makes
so sense. And for whatever reason, they're calling the live action ATLA TV. I don't know why. The original was TV as well.
Interesting. So I do think so. Yeah. So going back to like how our nerdiness is like it crosses lines with like some superhero stuff.
Yep. I think we're not like perpendicular. We're kind of like a double helix where like we'll end up.
Yeah. Yep. That's like a perfect description of it. So I'll be interested to see how this falls. And I think like the nice thing about this again versus like something like Game of Thrones is that it's from what you're telling me much shorter. Like it's
much shorter. Yeah, it's 22-minute episodes, as a cartoon typically is. 24 episode seasons, I want to say. It'll speed right by. And we can certainly take breaks in between seasons. And it's not quite sword and sorcery, like there are, like more primitive weapons because they're not quite at like the gunpowder age, like they're using, like catapults and stuff, but they also kind of are a little bit steampunky because they have, like their versions of tanks and stuff like that. But it's more like Asian Indian flavored than.
It will be interesting to see how I fall into this because like I've never ever gone for like anime.
Right.
I've never watched Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z or
Did you watch Critical Role?
I've listened to a couple episodes of Critical Role. I haven't watched
I meant the cartoon.
Oh, the cartoon. Oh yeah, I love that.
I would say that it's more like that than a traditional animation, like anime.
Interesting.
Because I think everyone is used to the idea of anime, so that's what they kind of attribute it to. And because of like the Asian theme, you think, oh, okay, it was produced in Asia.
Right.
So it very much has like that feudal Japan, China kind of feel instead of feudal Europe, but it was made in the U.S. or at least in America. They could be Canadian for all I know.
Right. I'll be interested because it's. I don't know if it's the style, if it's the subtitles, but I've always shied away from anime. I did like watch season 1 of Star Wars Visions, which is obviously anime, and all. I don't know if it's all Japanese creators, but it's the anime version of Star Wars.
Right.
It was all right.
Visions is kind of like their What If, isn't it?
Yes, but I think is it maybe it's not all anime inspired, but it is. Yeah, it's inspired. It's just like retellings of stories, and I thought they were. I know the one that I watched. The key memory is that it was an anime.
It kind of sounds to me like, as someone who hasn't seen that, it kind of reminds me of when they did Matrix Revolutions or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So it will be. I will be curious to see how it goes for this first season because I am. I always give everything 3 episodes before I'm like, I'm done. And this show might just become a small part of Everything Is Awesome. If that's the
Very
case.
true. I think that you'll enjoy it. I think like it's got like ethos enough to kind of hook you relatively quickly. Like it's not so juvenile that like an adult can enjoy it.
Right.
So
and I think the fact like we said, the fact that it's 22 minutes is helpful. I think the fact that it's much easier for us to record even though we're doing it remotely. It's which is why it's much easier for us to record. And the fact that like I would imagine as we're probably getting near the end of episode 0 here, that our episodes will likely be anywhere between like 15 minutes to a half hour.
Yeah.
Like this is going to be a very short podcast.
Bite-sized or fun-sized or however you want to call it.
Right. Yeah. I'm not expecting maybe like the season premieres and season finales and bonus episodes might be a little bit longer. So I think that's another nice thing is like not I mean, I never care about having an hour-long podcast. I can talk, but
Right.
I think that hooks you because it's less time for your involvement beyond the show itself, and it does it just makes it easier all around to produce this show.
Right.
So I will be, and this was like the original concept for the what I was dubbing as like just the late 2 show.
Right.
Was going to be like the moniker of let's start with Game of Thrones and then we'll go to this and then we'll go to this. But what honestly sold me about this was the name of Avatar State Radio. I was like, that's fucking gold. Let's do it. Like, that's so good.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, for people who have not seen the show, the moniker is going to mean absolutely nothing to them for the same reason it didn't mean anything to you at first.
Right. Right. Or they're going to think it's about blue cats.
Right.
Or like it has big. There was a Star Wars podcast that I still am interested in starting. So I might bleep out the name of this because I don't want anyone to take it. But I was going to do a show called, and it has that feel where like the concept of that podcast was going to be like, all right, let's like talk about Star Wars, but as
if you're in that universe.
In the universe, mm-hmm. And like so we're reviewing the movie, but like we're reviewing it in a way where we're like, did you hear that Luke Skywalker blew up the Death Star? And like this is how it started. And it was like a cheeky little way to do a show.
Give me 1 second. I have to look up something.
The glorious world of editing means you guys won't even know we're taking a pause.
I feel like I don't know for sure. I thought that I was going to have another thing that was going to get you involved in the Avatar universe even more. For some reason, I thought that Bruce Campbell was voiced a character in Korra.
Oh, Bruce Campbell is involved in it? I know I'm going to love it.
He's not, I don't think. I've got his television roles here. There's someone in Legend of Korra who like Daniel Day Kim is in the new show, Jin from Lost. There's actually in the Netflix live action, there's 3 actors from Lost who are in it. The guy who played Appa in Shang-Chi's actors show. All these names are freaking lost on me right now. Yeah. He's in it. All the young actors are brand new. Boomy. Well, you're not going to know who Boomy is. So, but the guy, the lead guy, the living person from the Ghosts CBS show, he's in the live action. Let me go to Legend of Korra.
What a wild departure! Like, what 2 different properties to be in? Ghosts, a comedy show where you can't see the ghosts because you don't have that gift or whatever. Right. And then what I've seen one screenshot, the title, like whatever the promo image is on Netflix for the live action, and I'm like, this straight up looks like that AMC live action samurai show,
Shogun.
I think that was, I don't know what it was called, but it was on AMC, and it was a samurai type show. I was like, this looks like a straight up samurai show. What is going on here?
There's a couple of those weird things. Here, let me tell you. So David Faustino, who you will know as Bud, so he's one of the main characters in Legend of Korra. In Legend of Korra, the cartoon. Oh, okay. You're going to know some of these people, but I'm not going to give you the names of everybody because they're just all over the place. But J.K. Simmons is another main character. Yeah,
okay. It's got the J.K. stamp of approval. I'm in.
And let me see if I can get you some of the ones from...
I can't believe Bud's in it.
Yep. So Mae Whitman, who was in Independence Day and... Well, I mean, she had a very small role in Independence Day, but she was in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World and Arrested Development. She plays Katara. I feel like Zachary Tyler Eisen, I don't know anything that he's been in. Jack DeCena, who plays Sokka, he's been in a lot of a lot of voice acting roles. Zuko is played by Dante Basco. Do you know who Dante Basco is?
Rufio.
Rufio, yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yep. And then Iroh was played by two people. He was played by Mako, who was a Japanese American actor who he sadly died between seasons 2 and 3, and an actor named Greg Baldwin picked up. I think you know D. Bradley Baker, right?
Yeah. Oh man, I love D. Bradley. He's like, he's the star and the star and the star and the star of the match.
So let me tell you who D. Bradley Baker plays. The animal voices in the show.
That checks out. That checks out. 100%.
And then I think for the most part, the other actors, well, do you want to know who plays Fire Lord Ozai, the big bad of the series?
Yeah, let me hear it.
Mark Hamill.
Holy shit, Mark Hamill! This is season 1 of...
I think he's recurring in season 1. He's a guest in season 2, but he's a much bigger role in the main series in season 3.
And this is of the season we're going to start watching.
Correct.
You just had to lead with that, Mark Hamill. I'm in. Fucking Luke Skywalker and the Joker.
Mm-hmm.
The trickster.
Good times here. Those are the main ones.
Huh? What isn't Mark Hamill in?
Right.
He's in everything.
Let me see if in Legend of Korra I pretty much gave you all the main people. They've got you might know Janet Varney.
Yeah, that name's she. I think she does a podcast on the Maximum Fun Network.
She was also in Stand Against Evil with the guy from Scrubs. Obviously, David Faustino. PJ Byrne, who...
That name's so familiar.
He does like a lot of character work. Let me see.
That name is so familiar.
He was in Shazam! Fury of the Gods. He was in... You would recognize him if you saw him. He's typically like seen... he's very typical looking white dude. No glasses, beard, or anything like that. So him and David Faustino, their characters are brothers. One of the interesting things that you'll learn from the M. Night Shyamalan movie is there is an actress who played one of the characters in that who ends up voicing a brand new character in Legend of Korra. That's the only time, to my knowledge, that that's happened. J.K. Simmons plays Tenzin. I'm not going to tell you more about that yet. Mindy Sterling, who played Madame Frau in Austin Powers.
Oh my God!
Mm-hmm. So she plays like a police officer in like the capital city in Legend of Korra. So like there's so much time in between those two series that you go from kind of like the feudal feeling to like, all right, we're in contemporary times.
Oh, interesting.
And then I gotta figure out what the name is of the damn guy who makes the movers. Let me see. It's important. John Michael Higgins, who, again, he's been in so much character work. He's in like the same group of people as like Eugene Levy and.
Oh, okay.
You've seen Pitch Perfect, right?
A long time ago, yeah.
Do you recall the male announcer who's with son of a bitch?
Oh, he's so familiar in my head. Yeah.
So he plays a character.
Banks, right?
Huh? Yeah. He's the equivalent, the male counterpart to Elizabeth Banks' character.
Yeah. So
he is, I think, a character who shows up in season 1 and he's in all the seasons. So he's very funny as a character named Varric, and is kind of like their wannabe like Tony Stark. So like he's like this inventor who wants to make all this stuff. So just a lot of good voice work.
Yeah. So here's what episode 0 has shown so far, is that A, I knew virtually nothing coming into this episode, but B, I'm walking out knowing a little bit more, but very excited to watch this show now.
There you go.
And it's probably it should be the story that gets me, but a voice cast will hook me in a heartbeat.
Well, and I think like even not having Mark Hamill or like any of the other big names that I mentioned. The core three, Katara, Aang, and Sokka, they're very, very good at what they do. Like they're very good at evoking like a lot of emotion and everything. Sokka is hilarious. Katara is like the heart of the group, and Aang is the youngest of the three, because when he went into the ice, he was 12 or something like that. So he has the childlike naivety of an actual 12-year-old. So it's a nice balance of all three of them.
And like the one thing, especially with Mark Hamill, is like usually his performances, especially in voice acting, are like so different. Sometimes you don't know it's Mark Hamill. Like there's times where I'm like, who was this that voiced it? And I'll look and it's Mark Hamill. I'm like, what?
Right.
Like he's a very good voice actor.
Yep. I don't think, like, looking back at it, like Mark Hamill's biggest voice role that I can remember has always been the Joker. Like that's the one that like gets in my head. And a lot of the times, like if you hear the Joker voice in one of the other characters that he's played, I'm like, okay, that's definitely Mark Hamill. I can't go back in my head and say to myself, oh, that was Mark Hamill in Ozai, in this character who we're about to see.
Right.
And Jin from Lost is the one who plays him in the live action.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah, so it'll be interesting if I'll be able to kind of like, now knowing that it was Mark Hamill, catch it.
Yeah, that's a lot of times knowing who it is helps as well. But and it's like going again just on a slightly side tangent here. Mark, I was arguing with people on Twitter about Star Wars, not on Twitter, on TikTok, about Star Wars and how if you're a Star Wars fan, if you love Star Wars, you're a Star Wars fan. It doesn't matter what it is. If you love something, you're a fan. And people were like up in arms about it because people have to be trolls. And people were saying
you're only allowed to be a fan of something if I'm a fan of it.
Right. And people were saying that like even the actors, like they don't do much work anymore from that sequel trilogy. To which I brought up all their IMDb's and stuff, and I was like, you guys remember, look at Mark Hamill's resume between Return of the Jedi and Batman the Animated Series, and there's not a lot that any one of us that are fans of Star Wars would have probably watched him in. The Flash. The original Flash with John Weasley Ship, that would have been the one that we saw him in, maybe, as Star Wars fans. Outside of that,
he's definitely had a renaissance as an older actor.
Right, and not to say that the stuff he did in like the 80s and early 90s is bad. It's just stuff that wouldn't be on any fans' radar really, except for maybe the older fans, but even that I don't think so, like because it's just I don't know. So like I don't know, it's nice to see him as you're right, as an older actor, since Force Awakens, kind of having a renaissance of his career, with obviously the sequel trilogy, with was it God, that not Bly Manor, the House of Usher. He did that the Machine movie that I still want to see. So he's just having a great
he was in one of the Batman movies, right? Let's see. We're again tangent. It's our middle name.
Remember that Birds of Prey TV show that was on right around when Smallville started? He, I think, did the voice of the Joker in that. But I don't know that he was in a Batman movie. Like he was in the Phantom. What was it called? The Phantom, the animated series movie.
There was a live action that I remember seeing him in, where like he was outside of a bank or something like that. He was in What We Do in. He was in What We Do in the Shadows. Huh?
He was in the Grant Gustin's The Flash.
There you go.
As the Trickster, and in an alternate reality, in Earth 2, the Trickster dressed very similar to the Joker.
There you go.
And that's probably the image you're thinking of.
Yep.
Which is an amazing. Listen, I wish I did a Flash podcast back when that was airing, because that to this day is still my favorite Berlantiverse show. But anyway, that's not this podcast. This is Avatar State Radio, where at some point we'll have a proper way to introduce this show and exit this show.
I think you got to give it 3 episodes before you know how to intro it.
Yeah, is it this episode? No. Mike, where can they? I don't even know who's the proper host of this show.
I think we're co-hosts. I don't think you don't. I'm the host in the way that like I'm introducing you into a world, like I'm introducing you into a comfortable house.
And I guess I'm the host that's just introducing this show to the world.
Right. So you can find me on tellus.com. That's where you can find. That's kind of like my link tree. It'll show you all the other places that you can find me on the internet. But if you want to see our premium stuff, you can find our digital premium goods on patreon.com/tellus. And if you want to find our premium physical goods, you can find us on etsy.com/tellus or tellus.com/ I don't remember which one it is. Those are the big ones.
You've got to get that in shape for future episodes.
I'm going to have it on a picture over here.
I am Kevin Gallagher. You can find me on most of the internet at That Nerdy Kev, except for Facebook. I'm at That Nerdy Kev 1984, which is my public profile, not my private one. But I mainly use TikTok. So if you're going to interact with me on TikTok more than anywhere else. I of course host Everything is Awesome, the long form interview show where we talk to awesome people about awesome things. You can find new episodes every Monday on awesomepodcast.com through the end of June. And then we take our summer break. And my personal website's not up yet, so go to mayorlevittown.com. I have won that election because no one else ran against me. But there's also a ton of great information about voting on that website. A lot of it is geared towards Pennsylvania and Pennsylvania dates, but that doesn't mean the information there isn't helpful to anyone in the country. And there's some like example issues that I think are important to me, at least. I think they're important for everybody. So it's a satirical site about me being mayor, but it also has some valid information. So awesomepodcast.com, mayorlevittown.com, and eventually something.com for Kev.